When it comes to choosing a broker to start investing, Interactive Brokers is always presented as an option. And that's why today I'm going to tell you everything they don't tell you about investing with Interactive Brokers, and finally give you a conclusion on whether or not it's worth investing on this platform. So let's get started right away without further ado and begin with the advantages that make this broker unique. And of course, we clearly have to start with the positives. Later, I'll tell you about the disadvantages and the downsides, but we have to look at both sides of the issue. The first major advantage, and possibly the most important compared to other brokers, is the financial strength that this broker has. And that's because Interactive Brokers is not just another broker, it is listed on the Nasdaq under the symbol EBKR, which means it is subject to constant audits and must maintain the highest level of transparency. This is clearly not a minor detail when we're talking about entrusting all our money to a platform, but what really makes Interactive Brokers stand out and what many people highlight is its global reach. We're talking about having access to more than 150 markets in 33 different countries, all conveniently within a single powerful platform. Do you want to buy shares on the Tokyo Stock Exchange or perhaps ETFs that are listed in London? With Interactive Brokers, you can truly do it all from a single comprehensive account, all from one unified platform. It's like having an all-in-one solution. And pay attention here, because you're probably thinking something like, no, but why would I want to invest in all those markets and countries if I'm only interested, for example, in the US market? But believe me, when you start to look a bit deeper and see opportunities in other markets, you'll wish you had started with a broker like this one that allows you to invest in almost any part of the world. Now let's talk about another aspect that few people mention, which is their stock lending system. If you have shares in your portfolio, Interactive Brokers can lend them to other investors and you receive a portion of the interest. It's like, for example, having an additional passive income from the shares you already own. And we can't forget about investor protection, since your assets are segregated, meaning they are not mixed with the broker's own accounts. In other words, the money generated by the broker and the broker's own funds are kept in a separate account as part of their company. But the income or money belonging to people investing through Interactive Brokers is kept in separate accounts. That is, they do not have access to that money. Additionally, this money is protected for up to $500,000 through the SIPC in the United States, and there are additional protections in other countries. Also, for more advanced users, their Trader Workstation or TWS platform truly stands out, which, although it may seem very complex at first, is indeed one of the most powerful on the market. It includes technical analysis tools, fundamental analysis, screeners, and virtually any feature a professional investor might need. But perhaps one of the most interesting advantages, and one that few people know about, is that you can open a practice account with virtual money, which allows you to get familiar with the platform and test strategies without risking your real capital. And once you feel confident, you can start investing your own money. But now let's move on to talk about the disadvantages, because not everything is perfect, not everything can be the best. Let's start with this part that many people don't want to tell you about when they talk to you about this platform. The first and possibly most frustrating for many is the complexity of its platform, which is both an advantage and disadvantage. Let's not kid ourselves. Interactive Brokers was not designed with beginners in mind. Its interface can be quite overwhelming, even for people with investment experience. So, as I was saying, this can be an advantage for those who need very advanced tools, but a disadvantage for people who are just starting out in the world of investing and don't know what to do. But in the long run, this particular situation is also quite similar to what I previously mentioned about having immediate access to many diverse markets, which you might not really need at the very beginning. It may be that at first you don't need all these tools, but in the future you might. So it's much better to have them from the start, or at least that's what I think. Another critical point is the language issue, especially for Latin Americans or Spanish speakers in general, because yes, they do have a Spanish version, but we have to be honest, the translation seems like it was done by a robot. Literally, the translation of the Interactive Brokers website into Spanish is not exactly the best. However, well, we could talk about possible solutions to this later on, and if you don't feel comfortable navigating in English, this can be a real headache. Now let's talk about minimum commissions, because there's something here that not everyone mentions. And the thing is, if you plan to make small investments, say $100 or less, the minimum commissions can eat you alive. For example, if you pay a minimum commission of $2 or $3 per trade on a $100 investment, you're losing 2 to 3% just in commissions. And clearly that doesn't sound very appealing at all. Now, another significant disadvantage is that the extensive account opening process truly deserves a special mention among these notable drawbacks, since you should be thoroughly prepared at first to go through a veritable marathon of numerous forms, detailed documentation, and a series of probing questions. It's not that it's entirely impossible, but when compared to many other brokers, let's just say that the registration process typically takes a bit longer, you will have to submit more documentation, and it's certainly gonna take you a bit more time compared to, as I already mentioned, other established platforms. Now, deposits and withdrawals can also prove to be quite a headache, especially if you're located in Latin America. While in the United States and Europe it's pretty straightforward, in our countries it can become a longer and more expensive process. However, there are alternatives, and in fact we have them on this channel, such as apps that let you have a bank account in the United States and send money directly from countries in Latin America. You can look for that content on my channel, or you can just let me know in the comments and I'll send you the link. Speaking of this, I don't just like to focus on the problems, I also like to talk about how we can actually do this. Regarding the fees we discussed earlier, the ultimate strategy is that if you want to deposit money into Interactive Brokers, go ahead, but before investing, accumulate sufficient capital so the fee they charge isn't too significant. Then, regarding the complexity of the platform, the key is simply to get started, that is, start using it, start taking advantage of it, and from there you can keep learning and eventually you'll be able to make the most of it. Then, regarding the language issue, I really recommend that you keep the English version, don't change it. Even if you don't know English, use translators, use Google Translate, and as time goes by it will get much easier because the vast majority of investment terms are in English, so you'll end up understanding them much better. I already mentioned the topic of deposits and withdrawals, and honestly in this sector, as I said, there are apps and alternatives to have bank accounts, for example, in the United States, and to make transfers in a much faster and easier way, allowing us to skip the step of traditional banks, which sometimes aren't that cheap for sending money to the United States. Now let's answer the definitive question from the title of this video: is Interactive Brokers worth it? The answer is, as is almost always the case, it depends on your investor profile. For example, if you are a beginner investor who is starting out with small amounts, let's say less than $1,000, there are probably better options on the market. Also, brokers that are more user-friendly with well-translated Spanish interfaces and no minimum commissions might be more suitable for you at this stage. But if you already consider yourself an intermediate or advanced investor, or even if you aren't yet but plan to be in the future, and you intend to trade with larger amounts and want global access to many markets, Interactive Brokers is probably one of the best options available. I would sum up Interactive Brokers in one phrase: it's basically like having a Ferrari. It's certainly not the best car to learn how to drive, but it's truly unbeatable when you know what you're doing.